Guys, so this is my follow-up video on the KVK prep. So I kind of want to go with you with what I ended up doing on prep, what the percentages were, what the value was, that sort of thing. So for KVK prep, there was 5 days that we ended up doing. The 5th day I didn't really do anything because I'd spent everything on the first 4 days. But the first day was essentially charm day, right? And on charm day I did 11 charms, which were 6 for archer and 5 for lethality. So that turned out to be like 3,300 charm designs and 1,320 charm guides. Fair market value, like if you aren't getting them through events and whatnot, was probably about like $350 or so. And as a consequence of that, we got about 110% of archer health, lethality, and infantry health and lethality, or 25% of infantry health, 25% infantry lethality, 30% infantry archer lethality, and 30% archer health. So that was like the base one for that. Next day was the shard and research day. And on this day I had about 174 days, I think it was, of research days saved up. And so you can see the difference here. So this is before and this is after. So looking through this, I kind of added it all up and it came out to be about 140% of differences. Some of these things jumped up a lot, like infantry defense, infantry lethality. Some things jumped about 30%. So that was a decent deal. But when I calculated out, like if you were not to get free, speed ups or whatever, which I think we get about 100 days of research or 100 days of speed ups free every time, it would be about like $500 or something market value. But as a consequence, when I added it all up, it came out to be about 140% overall that it increased my stats. So it was better than charms overall, but charms are going to hit lethality and health, which is the most important ones, right? But I thought it was a very good investment. I ended up finishing off all the 5 series, and I got touched on everything in the 6. So everything in 6 got to like level 1 essentially, and that was that. All right, after that was pet day, and for pets I had 1,700 charm designs. 1,700 common training marks. And then I had a few advanced ones too, like maybe 30 or so. I didn't really do much on those. And here you can see what the difference is there. Okay, here's before. And then here was the after. So you can kind of see like this was, if you look at the lethality and health, when you're doing the common marks, that's what that's all going to hit is lethality and health. If you're advancing the pets, then that's going to do the other ones. But you can see I got like pretty big jumps on all this stuff. Now, just a side note, when I started this, I had the lion and bear at 0. Like they were still in gray, so they had done nothing. And if you know how it goes, from gray to green, you're getting your absolute best value on those common marks. They're just going to hit all the time and just going to get up there really quick. I think it took like maybe 100 or so to get all the way out of gray on both for each of them. And then I got all the way to blue on all of them too. And the result was pretty good, like when I added it all up, this was about 170% increase I got for health and lethality. And my tips on this is like after going through this, like right now I got a few at purple. This is after this KVK, with just another day of pet stuff. And I think that what I would do if I was doing this in retrospect is I would have done common marks all the way through purple, because the difference between the common marks and the advanced marks is it's pretty much a 1 to 10 ratio. You're going to pay for, if you're going to buy these things, it's like 1 training mark is same cost approximately as like 10 training marks, same cost as approximately 1 advanced mark. And really, my experience of going through purple is that the purple is still cheaper. I'm not sure about going from purple to gold. I assume at that point it's probably worth to do advanced, but I'll test that out, and if it turns out to be different, I'll let you know. But this was a good one. So I think that the market value of those training marks is about 300 or so, but it again got 170. So there wasn't a huge difference in price per se, but the value there for me was pets. All right, so the next day was Widget forge hammers, and this is where like everything for me kind of changed. So let's see, where is it? Here it is. So this is when it went up from before the widgets to after the widgets. Look at the attack difference there. Getting 100% on infantry attack, Look at infantry, cavalry, 170%, and archer attack, that went up like, another 100%. And when that happened, I was just like, my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God, what happened here? How did this go up so high? This is like insane numbers of like hitting 900% and stuff. So that's when I started like kind of going into a deep dive about widgets. And that's what I'll get into now. So I started like looking at this power stuff. And I started with this, right? So if you go over here, not that. These are kind of your base stats, right? Like if you look at it, this is what you're going to get if you have no heroes. These will advance a little bit because of what your alliance does and those boosts that your alliance gives you. But generally speaking, your deployment capacity is going to be that. And these are going to be your base stats. And I'll show you that right here. So here is my base stats, right? No heroes, no gear, no nothing. They're about like here, right? And that's just doing a beast. So no rally, no nothing. Base stats. Now, if you come up here, this is with attacking a beast, but this is with my heroes now, right? And you see those numbers jump up a lot. And those numbers jumping up is purely based on pretty much your heroes adding that value to them, Like if you look at the heroes, they'll pretty much tell you what they're adding. Let's take... So you can see here, this is going to add 247, 247, 237, and 314, right? And these are kind of based basically on this gear that you have. That's going to boost those numbers up. Like if you strip that from him, all of a sudden, oops. You can see what they turned into, right? You lose a lot of health, lose a lot of lethality, all that kind of stuff. So that's the effect of your equipment. All right, but then look at this. This is where it jumps up crazy. And let me go back to that one I just showed you with this. So if you go to a bonus source, there's nothing there, right? Nothing is really adding anything to those. Oh, here it is. Special stat bonus. Nothing's being added there. You're getting nothing from any of these widgets that any of these characters have. But now let's go to the rally attack. And this is where these numbers jump up considerably. Look, 911, 924, 897. And when you go to this bonus detail, this is where you're going to see what the bonuses is. Here you got 30% rally squad attack bonus. And that is coming from Amadeus, who's giving you 15% with a max widget, and also from Petra, who's giving you 50% with max widget. So if you have somebody who's doing like attack, and let me tell you something, it's kind of interesting. I figured out how this works. It was based on what somebody else I saw online, but if you take this base number here, let me see. Of say like 678, to get this number here of 911, you take that 30%, you add it to it, and then you multiply it by another 30% and add to that. Or if you do like 1.3, you'll get the same number. And it's a dead-on number, so that is the formula. You can test it out yourself. It's pretty cool. So that's how that works. Now, when this happened, I was like, oh my God, like, because Petra was the first cavalry I had that added a widget that would increase that. So then it kind of changed my whole mentality on this whole game, right? Because if you've got these guys in here, these are only for lethality, right? I mean, these are only for attacks. Like, if you're defending, these all go away to nothing, which means that when previously I was not going to do anything with Jaeger, my defense was going to be him, who's got, a 15% squad defense bonus. So it's not going to work on offense, only defense. I was going to use Hildy, who had a 15% health bonus for defender squad, right? So it's not going to work offensively, only defensively. And then I was going to use Marlin, but like as we know, Marlin is a offensive widget of lethality of 15%, so his actually wouldn't work on defense. So the only other defensive player that we have that's an archer is really Saul, right? And I didn't do much with Saul because I wasn't really doing much with these early characters because my understanding was they just were going to get wiped out pretty quick. So he'll give a percentage of 15% attack, defender a troop attack if he's maxed out. But like, as you can see, I really haven't done anything with him. So that left me with Jaeger. So now I'm kind of like, man, I got to like get this guy just so I can have a cavalry defense, or I mean an archer defense that will be able to actually add something to that. So my new thought about this is that if I get him up to 15%, and that adds to Hildy, that'll be like a 30% health buff on defense. And so I can have him, Hildy, and Eric as my defenders. So it turns out I'm going to do all 3 heroes. In next generation, in Generation 4, Rosa is the one that takes over for Jaeger, but hers is an offensive widget, which is another lethality widget, just like Marlin. So I'll probably invest in her to do that, but Jaeger will still be relevant because he'll be the highest defensive widget we have. And so it's pretty much going to be, I mean, you can get Alcar if you want. I'm going to stick with Eric for next generation, I'm pretty sure. So next generation is probably going to be like either Eric, Jaeger, Hildy, or Eric, Jaeger, Margot, who also has a defensive widget as Cavalry. So just some things to consider. But yeah, that was a big game changer for me when I did that, when we realized that. So all in all, that was pretty much what happened. In KVK itself, we actually lost, but it was kind of like we won, but we lost. It's kind of unfortunate. We decided to do a shorter one of 3 hours instead of 6 hours. And where we messed up is, one, we agreed to do 3 hours, which I think once you're actually in the battle, like everybody wants to keep going. I think we could have easily done 6 hours and won. And then second, we did a rule which probably didn't help us very much. And that rule was that it wasn't whatever kingdom held the castle longest, it was whatever alliance did. So we had 2 alliances going after it, and in total, we held it much longer than the other alliance, the other kingdom. But they had 1 alliance that they were holding it continuously, and that's what ultimately, you know, we played by the rules we set, and we lost, but we should have won. That's all I have to say. So anyway, that is my discussion about this and about power, and it's really kind of interesting about these widgets, you know. Those widgets really do add a lot. The only consequence of those is that, you know, they, once the hero's done, they're done, right? You're not going to get that boost anymore because you're just not going to use them. So it's kind of more expensive to buy those widgets. I think it's, you know, widgets are about $1 each. If you go through Buccaneer Bounty, they're going to be free. If you go through Champagne Fair, they're free. But it's very hard to get those ones free. But ultimately, that is such a big power boost, and it's something we really got to consider.